welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. One of the long-running anxieties, worries, questions, really reasonable questions is, I don't live in a house with a driveway that I can park a car in. How do I charge my car? I live in an apartment. I don't have specific parking spaces for me. I live in a terraced house in a city. How can I charge my car? It's all well and good for you fancy pants people with your own driveway. Okay, so some basic stats on that. In the UK, 60% of households have somewhere off the street to park, which is really surprising. This is government figures, which means 40% of people don't. So currently, there's no excuse for 60% of the population not to have an electric car. It's a rather lot less than that. So we could certainly have a lot more electric cars without any problem. That said, we know people who live in terraced houses or who live in buildings where they can't park the car and they can't charge it, and they still have electric cars and they enjoy using them and they're very happy. But it's definitely a challenge. Go wider to the wider world, two-thirds of the global population live in what we could loosely term apartments, as in collective buildings, not one house on the ground, but multiple floors of houses and flats and all the apartments and all that. So two-thirds of people haven't got somewhere they can, park a car off the street. So that has to be addressed, and that is what we're doing today. We are addressing that very problem with a company called WeVo, who run electric car charging software behind the scenes. And I'm not going to try and describe what they do because our guest today is going to be far more adept at doing that. So Imogen Bogle, who works on the Fully Charged Show, who did a lot of the research for this, wasn't able to do this podcast, and whatever the reason, we were going to make episodes and all that stuff had to be delayed till next year. So I was handed some fascinating information, but you will be able to tell I'm catching up as we go. So it's a learning experience for me, and I hope, therefore, a learning experience for you. So without more ado, please welcome Effie Vraka from WeVo. Well, hi, Effie. Thank you so much for joining us today and finding time to do this really important topic, something that comes up all the time on the Fully Charged Show. So can you just give me a kind of background of why WeVo started, how it started, and what it's aiming to do, just a sort of overall picture of the company?
Sure. Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Robert. So a bit of background on WeVo Energy. We are an EV charging software platform. What we do and how we started from is the energy optimization on EV infrastructure on a bigger, more complex building setting. So apartment blocks, right, workplaces, retail parks, these kind of buildings that have, apart from different kinds of loads, different electrical loads, also a lot of different stakeholders and decision makers that make things quite complex, much more complex than living in a single family home and installing a charger at your place.
Yeah. So it is that big thing, because that's the question we often get asked is, I live in an apartment, I'd love to have an electric car, but there's nowhere to charge it, and my landlord won't let me put in a charger even though I've got a parking space, all those things. So effectively, that's a way round that you could take on that responsibility, install the chargers, operate them. Is that the idea for say, from a landlord's point of view?
We can definitely contribute towards lowering the barriers towards that.
Yeah.
So what we do is we offer a platform that can offer much more cost effective to start with EV infrastructure on a building. So all of the new buildings, at least most governments right now, have put regulations in place to provision for EV charging infrastructure, but most of the buildings are decades old. They have very limited electrical capacity, and submitting an application for an upgrade, this is both costly and takes time. It is quite bureaucratic. So what WeVo helps to begin with at design phase is to actually make use of the existing electrical capacity coexisting with the other loads. Even if that capacity is quite low, we can make the best of it with smart charging algorithms. So this is the barrier number one, like getting started, even convincing the landlord that it's worthwhile, it's going to provide a lot of value, and it's not going to cost too much. And then,
okay, no, please go on.
Yeah, and then operationally, it helps with the bills, run it as efficient as possible.
Right, because that's one of the confusions is when you put a charger in your home, you know you're paying for the electricity. There's no one else involved. You know, you plug into your own electricity, you pay for that. But when you're in an apartment block, you're not going to be using the electricity that you have in your apartment. You're going to be using it in the car park or something. You know, so that's
exactly.
I know I'm from talking to people who are in that position. You know, even if the owner of the building lets them put a charger in, they don't know how to then connect that to an energy provider. So that's where what you're doing becomes increasingly important. Yeah.
You cannot use the tariff and the supply that you have in your apartment. Even if you're lucky enough to have your own dedicated parking bay, then you you have permission to use it rather than you own it. So you don't own the board, you don't own the cable, you're not the one insuring the space either.
Yeah.
So there is a lot that comes into that.
Right. And so do you have specific hardware then that you install to do this? Is that, or could you use any charger from any company as long as they're safe?
We are hardware agnostic, and that's one of the beauties of our software, because that means that the landlords or the tenants, whoever is the decision maker, can choose from a range of charge points to fit their needs. Our platform is OCPP based, OCPP Open Charge Point Protocol. So as long as the
all right, thank you.
Yeah, it is an open protocol that can connect to a platform, someone that can control the charge point, basically. So as long as the charge point manufacturer and the model is compliant to that, we can connect to it, no problem. And sometimes you find that a site started with a specific brand of chargers, but since then there are more options, better options. We can mix and match. We can make the most of the existing infrastructure instead of having to rip it all off when it's time to expand it.
Yeah, because that's a good point. I've not really thought of that, but I know of some car parks, large car parks at a shopping centre, which have like 50 or 60. They're very, very simple. They're just literally a socket on the wall. And currently they don't charge you for the electricity, but I know they will eventually. So at the moment you pay to park there, but you just plug in and it works. But what you could do in that situation is you could add a layer onto that, which allows the owner to charge for the electricity in some way. You know,
absolutely,
that would, and they wouldn't have to change all the actual sockets that they've installed.
No, as long as the existing ones are OCPP compliant, then there is no need. You can just adopt this and migrate them into the platform quite easily.
Right.
Which is another cost saving there.
Yeah. But then I guess the thing is that, I'm thinking of a specific apartment block I know in London, which does have a car park, but I would imagine has, like maybe 1970s wiring, not 1950s, slightly more modern. But I can imagine that the excess capacity that car park has is really low. But then I also know that everyone falls asleep at night and doesn't have, so is that how it operates then? It's basically on a timer. I have the timer at my house. It's that system. You'll use the electricity when there's less demand in the building.
Yeah, pretty much. You're spot on. So just imagine, the average home owner would be plugged in for at least 10 hours, I would say, closer to 12. if they're home working even longer, possibly. So even with a low capacity, even if that is let's say capacity just for lighting, that was originally in this 70s building that you mentioned as an example, there will always be a little bit left. And if you can make some clever scheduling around tariff optimization and the members, the users' lifestyle, you can actually have them fully charged when they need it. It doesn't need to be quick charging. It just needs to be smart.
Yes. That's I guess a thing that people sometimes aren't aware. People who've never used an electric car aren't aware of the fact that, I only became aware of different tariffs and the way the electricity grid operates after I'd had an electric car for a couple of years. I didn't know about it. I knew nothing about it. You turn a light on and the light comes on, and you turn it off and it goes off, and that's it. That's as much as I knew about the grid, and I've learned a lot in the last few years. But that is a key point, I think, isn't it? That it is worth underlining, is that an electric car doesn't have to charge really fast instantly you plug it in, because you charge it when you're not using it. And this is a really critical argument that I have tried to get across many times, that you're not waiting for it to charge while you're at home, because you're cooking, watching the TV, talking to your family and sleeping.
Exactly. It needs to be ready when you are ready to drive it, not the moment that you plug in. And we have had sites case study sites where we have buildings that actually have like 4 underground parking floors that all of them share 40 amps, and that's not even just for EV charging, that is for lighting and elevators. And we actually have successfully installed and operating about 8 charge points at the moment, and we think that it's going to be at least 20 to 25 to reach that maximum capacity, where actually now we really need to upgrade that. So it's a really efficient way to retrofit EV charging into older buildings or buildings that have some other kind of limitation.
So, because a couple of things that it says on your website, which I was intrigued by. So you can reduce, I think it was that you can reduce installation costs by 30%. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how that works then, how that is possible? I mean, that's presumably aimed at someone who owns a big car park or an apartment block with parking, or a shopping, like a shopping car park.
Yeah, the bigger the building, the more the saving. But it's these elements that we talked about. Is you don't need to upgrade the electrical capacity in the building, and this is a massive cost. It can be more than 50% of the infrastructure cost in some cases. And the other thing is you can utilize, if there is an existing EV charging infrastructure, you can reuse that and just expand instead of ripping it off and then creating a completely new infrastructure. So this is where the savings are coming from.
Right. And then I noticed you have a WeVo app. So that is that app for the building owner or the car park owner, or is that it is for the drivers? Right.
It is for the drivers.
So you can see what your charger's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is the backend, the dashboard, where the CPO, charge point operator, who could be the building facilities manager or a third party that is offering the services, where they can see the full picture. But then the driver has the app on the phone that they can see exactly what is happening with their own vehicle. And also they have full control. I mean, we make it as simple as possible. You don't need to schedule anything. The system will do all of that for you. But it's all based on habits. But sometimes, you get back home and you need to go back on the road in 2 hours. So you need to charge right here, right now. There is a button that you can override the schedule and actually charge now, boost mode. Right. So things like that are through the app.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a very reassuring thing if you can see on an app, even if you're not doing anything. I know I've done this where I'm going, is the car charging? Because it's outside and I'm in bed and I go, oh, it is good. You know, you just
exactly, yeah.
I have
peace
done
of
that.
mind.
I admit I've done that. Yeah.
Especially as you
But
haven't
then
seen it starting charging,
yes.
because it's very good to know later on. It's okay, yeah, it started. Yeah.
Yeah. But then that's so the energy management system that you know, it's another thing that I think I've spent a long time trying to explain, and I only just understand it myself. But that, for instance, within a car, people go, well, why doesn't the battery run out like it does in my phone or my laptop? And you go, well, there's this incredibly sophisticated software that is protecting the battery. And then in terms of what you're talking about, there is, I'm assuming, very sophisticated software that understands how cars charge, how the grid works, does that connection between all those things. I mean, is that constantly evolving? That presumably you can learn all the time from different scenarios.
Absolutely. I mean, in the simplest form, the CPMS is between the cars and the chargers and orchestrating all of that. But then if you start adding some layers, the smart tariffs, or taking into account other loads on the building, or even generators like, I don't know, heat pumps, or some local solar generation, you can connect all of this and make a brain, something very clever that optimizes the energy in the building. And then even higher level, speak with the grid and see, for example, the wind is blowing in Scotland and we have excess clean energy. Can your site absorb it for free? Or even, to make some revenue? We're talking about demand side flexibility here that EV charging is perfect for.
Yes. I mean, that is something I've experienced firsthand, not often, but twice. When I had a tariff that I got paid to charge my car and fill my batteries at night. Twice it happened. It doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
I will admit that. Yeah. And I would imagine that for the next sort of 50 years or so, that could happen more and more. The more offshore wind we install, the more solar. There's going to be peaks of generation that we need to be able to absorb. And
absolutely.
And I guess your system can help do that.
Yeah. Again, it is two levels. It's about saving. So electricity can be much, much cheaper when this is happening, but also sometimes it goes negative, as you say, because it's much cheaper to consume it than switch off the turbine. So there are a lot of projects right now ongoing with regards to how EV charging can help with demand side flexibility and balancing the grid.
And what I'm just so I fully understand what you're talking about with all this charging is what I would call destination or home charging. You're not talking about rapid chargers that, like on a highway rest stop. It's really where you're going to leave the car for some time is the area you're dealing with.
Yeah, at WeVo, this is our area of focus. We can support public charging as well, but where our solution shines is where, like workplace or home and apartment block, where you have a high density of charge points, but also quite a long time where you plugged in, and therefore you can optimize the schedule and the energy. Because the public charging, normally the situation is that you are there for an hour, for half an hour, for 2 hours. There is not much optimization to be made.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the critical thing, I think, that I've always argued for, is that the more places there are to charge your car while you're doing something else, the better. That's what we need in a way. People always talk, because I think if you've come from a fuel car where you buy fuel and you stop and you buy fuel and you fill your tank and then you drive, that mentality doesn't really fit with an electric vehicle, because what you can do with an electric vehicle is like tip a small amount of petrol in your car all day while you're not using it, which is a hard thing to understand, before you've experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, with this we can make the whole system, the charging, work for us, fit our lifestyle, rather the other way around. And sometimes it's I've been a driver for an EV driver for 9 years, and we had to rent a van, an ice van, and we had to refill it, and that felt such a waste of time queuing to go
Yes.
to. It's
Yeah. That is so. It's such a hard thing to explain, but when I do talk to people about it, and they go, "I couldn't be bothered to stop and wait for 2 hours while I plug a camera." Well, I've never done that. One thing, and also I never wait. Well, you've got to stand up. We have the advantage, I think, in your generation and even mine, if we do this, is that I know what it's like to have a combustion engine vehicle. I had them for many decades. I'm really old, so I know what that's like, and I also know the advantages of. It's the exact opposite. Everyone thinks it's going to be much harder. It's actually much, much easier with an electric car. It's not much harder.
absolutely.
And I think this is what I loved about what you're doing, is that it's that area that I feel is often neglected. Not necessarily it doesn't happen, but it's neglected in the conversation. That I want to go to a car park where I know I'm going to be there for 3 hours. I want there to be a charger there that isn't fast, isn't expensive, isn't a huge cost of installation. It's quite simple. And I've seen it in countries like Norway and Denmark, where in a large new car park, every space had a charge socket, every single one. There wasn't
Exactly.
3 in the corner. The whole car park did.
And I think the charge points, especially when you're looking for something not necessarily too fast, too advanced, but something that is robust, reliable, safe, and OCPP compliant, there's so much consolidation, so much range to choose from these days in terms of charge point manufacturers. I think it makes so much more sense to electrify every bay instead of having a few and then have some kind of queuing system, reservation that with human nature doesn't always work very well. You cannot really properly enforce it.
Yes. But then, so one of the interesting things is, would you argue that what you're doing would make the generating capacity, I don't really like the word greener, because I think, we're talking about heavy industrial stuff like energy generation and cars. I don't think cars are green. Cars are cars. Mm-hmm. We want to be really green, then walk and be a vegan. That's how to be really green. And not many of us are that good at doing that, but certainly cleaner and more sustainable. But then would you say that this system would help that? Because you're working with the grid, so you can facilitate the use of more renewables, I'm assuming, from a system like this.
Absolutely. Charging when it's greener and cheaper, this is something that WeVo can do, consuming locally generated clean solar energy. Obviously, if you live in an apartment block and you don't don't buy an EV, but if you do have a car, we're trying to make switching to an EV as fair as possible for the families that work in apartments, to be as simple as living in a single family home, because these areas are normally urban, where there is high population density. There is also high car density, therefore fumes. So it's obviously helping the grid, but also helping people having cleaner air to breathe, and that is something very important as well.
Because that's in the notes I have, that I didn't realize it was quite that much. So basically 2/3 of the global population live in apartments, which is kind of
mind-blowing.
A lot. It's mind-blowing. I just hadn't thought about it ever before, but that is clearly, that has to be addressed. And I think there are things like car sharing schemes, and our relationship with cars is not exactly healthy now today. It's kind of, we need to have a conversation about that. But that, I can imagine that you're not going to run out of jobs. You're not going, okay, we've done all the car parks now, we've finished. It's a huge transition globally.
Absolutely, and the EV industry has received quite a lot of criticism. Great, you made amazing cars for the ones that can afford it, right?
Yeah.
But now, in the last few years, we see new models coming into the market that are affordable, that all incomes can access to. We need to do that for people that live in all sorts of dwellings as well. Yeah. This is how it's going to become mass adopted, and this is how we're going to burn less stuff, stop burning stuff.
Yeah.
And we need to do it in
absolutely.
a way that it does not compete with other amazing technologies. Because if you think about it, everything comes under one building with limited capacity, right? We shouldn't have to choose between decarbonizing the heating and the hot water, or EV charging, what comes first. We need to find ways to bring all of these technologies into the building.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I'm just looking at my notes now, but it's basically say if someone is listening to this and they own an apartment block, or they are a supermarket boss that has hundreds of car parks outside their supermarkets, which currently have maybe 2 charge points in them with a green leaf painted on the floor to highlight that. How would they, what would they do in the process? What would the process be when they get in touch with you and say, look, we'd like to put in 40 charge points or whatever, or upgrade what we've got?
Yeah, so we would definitely be able to help with that. It would need to be a site survey to understand the site better, the capacity on the site, the design, also how it's utilized, like how many visitors they have, what is the average stay time, and all of that. This will all contribute to designing a model, what is best. And the model could be a mix of different chargers. It could be like have a few DCs, have a few AC chargers, a mix of fast and slow ones and they might also want to use it for their own employees or for their own delivery vans. That's another use case. So you need to almost outline what are the different use cases and different user groups and cater for each one of them. And with our software, we can distinguish per user group in terms of which chargers they can have access to, what they pay, if they pay, and so on. So everything happens in a very seamless way. And once it's all set up, it's you can control and see everything from the dashboard.
Right. But then say you've got a business, an office block with parking, and I know I've been to some offices that have this, and there's a lot of chargers in the car parks. They're trying to encourage their employees to use electric vehicles. But then if I drive into one of those spaces and I plug in that charger, how do they know it's me? And then how do I pay for it? How does it work?
In a few years' time, maybe not too many, hopefully, I would tell you that the answer is plug and charge, this amazing new technology that as soon as you plug in, it recognizes your vehicle and it's you, and your account is connected with a card, and you don't need to do anything apart from plugging in. We're not quite there yet, quite close, but for the time being, either with your WeVo driver app or with an RFID key, or if it is kind of like public charging, you are an ad hoc user, not a member, then it's by scanning a QR code and following 3 very quick steps on your mobile phone until you can start charging to put your card details, basically.
But I mean, that's got to be the ultimate goal, is that, well, I mean, it is, I don't want to mention Tesla, but I have to. I do drive a Tesla, and I drive up to a supercharger and I plug it in. I don't even think about it. I just walk away and it's charging. Yeah. And I have to pay for the electricity, but that just is. And when you've experienced that, then you go back to the very friction-full systems that operate elsewhere. It is hard, and you just go, why can't we do that? But I guess you've got to design a system that recognizes every car make, can communicate with every car make when they've all got different protocols, different software, different lots of things.
And this is where all these new protocols that are being developed, standardization is so important. Everybody has been designing their own proprietary system or software. Tesla have got it right. Now we need to live in a world where everything is interoperable, and the way to do that is through setting the standards and adopting them.
Yeah. And then what about, because that's a very popular topic at the moment, it's about vehicle to grid, vehicle to load, vehicle to, I can imagine with fleets of vehicles, commercial vehicles, then that's a thing that I know is happening now. But is there a way you can? Do you see that? I mean, I wouldn't expect it to be happening now, but do you see that as a plausible use for your system in the future?
I think there will be some use cases for V2G for sure when it comes again. I think the technology is there already, but it's not financially viable. That's why we haven't seen too much momentum when manufacturers are trying to bring the prices down to make them more affordable. This would bring an extra cost. Yeah, exactly. But if and when it becomes more financially viable, we could see another tool in this tool set of helping decarbonize the grid. So what I was talking about, starting or modulating the charging, which is unidirectional, we can already do a lot. Once we can make it bidirectional, so actually pump energy back into the grid from your car's battery, that's the next level. So I'm 50-50. I'm just waiting to see how it all comes together. But I haven't seen a big boom yet. Everybody's talking about it, but I haven't seen large deployment yet.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it hasn't. Yeah, I think there isn't a big boom, but I think there might be one.
Hopefully,
in a way. Well, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It does make sense. I mean, and I can imagine if that was in an apartment building and your car is charging, and then you know that it actually might discharge, say, in the early evening when the peak demand is. If you get financially compensated for that, I think people would go, "Oh, that's fine. I don't mind as long as it's full in the morning. I'm happy." That's
exactly. Yeah. Then again, it would require different types of chargers. So the chargers that are there today, so that's another financial aspect. So it needs to be supported by the car and the charger. But absolutely, that's a very plausible scenario in the future.
Right. And I mean, presumably you're going to reach a point where you reach the limit of what any one location can charge, even with intelligent charging, even with reduced, spreading the load as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I think we're going to reach a point where we kind of have to upgrade quite a lot of our, basic grid connectivity to make sure, if you've got 60 car parking spaces and you can only charge 20 cars, eventually there's going to be 60 electric cars. I mean, in 10, 15 years. So we will need more power, presumably, to those locations.
Absolutely. But it is about doing it in phases, not all at once. I think all the big brains are planning already for that. It's just about delaying it as much as possible and not having to upgrade every single building, because there is a process, there is labor that needs to happen before this can happen. So, I'm not too scared after having read and heard a few interesting podcasts how the future grid is preparing for that. I think with this renewable boom, because we do see a boom there, it's going to be all fine as long as we can store it and consume it in a smart way.
Yeah. And I mean, because you'll forgive me for not knowing this, but presumably you do have quite a few chargers under your control now that I mean, I'm just wondering how far you've got in terms of learning how the system operates, and are you modifying it as you go along?
We have about 20,000 sockets in our platform.
Right.
So quite a few. But what we find, every time we enter a new region, a new country, the requirements are slightly different. And it all depends on the local regulations, the local grid, the EV car adoption. So we always have slightly different set of requirements to develop and try to address. But it's very interesting. Human behavior is pretty consistent, though, in all countries. People just want peace of mind. They just want to know that they're going to wake up and the car is going to be fully charged, ready for them. They don't like surprises. That is the common denominator.
Yeah. And I mean, I think my argument at the moment is the resistance to electric vehicles, which I completely understand when people have issues about it, but it is now psychological, not technological. The technology, you know, and I know, the technology essentially works. It's not a problem. It's the anxiety that you can have about whether your car will be ready in the morning, or will it charge, or can it get you to where you're going. And actually it can,
Mhm.
and it will be charged. And it is just a learning process that I guess, you know, you're having to go through that with everyone you're dealing with as well.
It's very interesting that you say that. We had the survey shared by one of our partners, CPO partners, that um, deploy WeVo on their sites. There were so many people that were quite worried. What do you mean we don't set a schedule? You just plug in and
Yeah.
you leave it. They were very nervous not having a start time and an end time. But after a week or two of seeing it in action, they were waking up. Then they didn't care anymore. So it's
Yeah.
seeing is believing. We need
Yeah.
to continue educating people. Sometimes it takes a little bit of faith, but once it works, it's fine. People move on.
Yeah. And because I don't know, I mean, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. I don't know what countries you're operating in at the moment. And I can't, I'm really good at accents usually, but I can't tell where you're from at all. I've got a clue.
My accent is Greek, even though I have been in UK for almost the best part of my life. I cannot lose my accent. So yeah,
It's
I'm
very
I'm
good.
from
Don't
Greece.
worry. Don't lose it. It
Well, we
works.
can still speak.
It's good.
So
Yeah.
and you understand me. But yeah, WeVo started from Israel. The headquarters are
Right.
there. And the test bed, I would say, is the Israeli market, which is quite high tech, great EV adoption. Then the next expansion was in the US, North
Right.
America, and Canada now. And lately, with me joining WeVo, we are starting to grow our European business as well.
Right. All right. So, because I was sort of assuming it was sort of European based, but actually there's more of your equipment in the United States than in Europe.
Yes. Yeah. We have
Right.
just started. It's been like months that we started in Europe. So.
Right.
Mhm.
God, so that must be, I bet there's some good challenges in the European market.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But thankfully, the European market is quite mature as well. There are challenges, but there are always people that know and can help, can explain, navigate through these challenges. So it's good.
It is. No, I'm really. It's very exciting, and I mean, it's really impressive what you've done so far. And also, it just does because it's really the clearest solution I've heard of how do you, if you live in an apartment, how am I going to charge a car? You know, so. But at the moment, then you wouldn't be doing sort of on street like anyone could park there and run a charger like that. Are you doing any of those sort of charges?
Oh,
There's quite a lot of that in London.
Yeah.
You can operate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
right.
A site doesn't need to be a physical building. It can be a street. We can manage any topology, any circuit. So it doesn't need to be a string of chargers, one connected with the other. It can be more modular topology. So that would be a very nice case study actually to try to do that. Because again, as I said, that would be like on-street parking for a long time, overnight, for example. It really lends itself to applying smart charging algorithms and machine learning like we do.
Yeah. I mean, because I think that's probably going to be the challenge that I think is bigger for everything to do with electric vehicles is, in a sense, older European cities. You know, when I've been in the United States or indeed in Australia, they've got so much room, so much space. Everything's bigger. You go, well, you can easily put chargers there. There's loads of room. You don't need, but whereas in a little Italian town or a Greek town or an old English town, the streets are like this. You know, there's no room to, you know, it's a real challenge to get that sort of installation in place.
Absolutely. And this is where there are older, big buildings. I mean, in the UK, most of the population have their own driveway. So I guess this must be a factor why EV adoption has been so rapid here as well.
Yeah.
But the southern you go into Europe, or more centrally, the bigger the percentage of the population that live in these high rises. And to be completely honest, they will be the people are lucky to even have a parking bay. Sometimes they need to find somewhere on the street to park. So it's not even, So these are the kind of problems that we're trying to solve. If there is a car park, whether that is shared bays or allocated bays, we can make the most of what is already there.
Right. And as a driver, you can have one account then, and that will let you charge in any charger that you control, right?
Yeah. Even if you don't have an allocated bay, but whatever is available, absolutely, it would track your account. Yeah.
And I mean, this is I think going to be the fascinating thing, that it's so hard to see how it's going to evolve, but it is to remove that friction. Whichever company can remove that friction and make it as easy as possible to charge your car anywhere. I mean, that's got to be the ultimate goal, I would guess. Mm-hmm. That's where we've got to aim for. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where we're trying to differentiate ourselves, because I think that the problem of installing a charge point at your driveway has been solved very successfully so far.
Yeah.
This is the next problem to be solved.
And it's also, I mean, it's the unfairness of the economics, I think, is a thing that concerns me, is that if you're lucky enough, wealthy enough to own a house where you've got space to park a car off the road, then you get unfair advantages, because I pay very little for electricity at night, much less than someone who has to use a public charger. So do you think there is a way of if you're operating enough chargers for that not to have that kind of extra high cost? I mean, can you reduce the cost to the driver of electricity if they're using off-peak electricity in one of your chargers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all it takes is a good energy supply that is EV friendly, and then if you optimize on the investment that is needed, then there is not much. Obviously, the operators need to cover the cost and make a little bit of living, but it doesn't need to be too much more expensive than charging at your driveway. And there is always economy in the scale that you can achieve through that. But the other thing is that I think that employers and companies can help their own employees, even if the cars are not company cars, but they're private cars. People don't always have the luxury of being able to charge at home. Why, if there is a car park in the office, why don't you electrify that and give your employees the chance to charge at work? Compensated for potentially, but you don't need to actually make a margin on your employees. Just offer it as a perk, as a benefit.
No, I mean, I know two people who live on streets in England where they can't park a car and they can't charge it, but they've been able to use their car very successfully because they charge it at work.
Exactly.
And they're very lucky because they don't have to pay. Both of them get free charging at work.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they still do. They certainly did for a long time. But so I mean, there are ways around it, aren't there? But I mean, okay, one last question. So if someone is running a fleet of, say, taxis or delivery vans or something like that, can you operate that charging system for them? And is that something you've done, or is that really out of your remit?
Yeah, absolutely. A fleet can be either, well, there's so many different definitions of a fleet, but if it's a depot-based fleet, like a site with multiple chargers, there will be like any other site with user groups, different tariffs, and so on. If it is a distributed fleet that charges anywhere, home, depot, on the go, that is another use case. So with a CPMS, with an EV charging system, you can track one account regardless of where they are charging and make a statement of all of the charging sessions into one.
Right. So I see. That's yeah. So you, as the company, you would see exactly what your charging is costing over the whole fleet of vehicles you're running.
Exactly. Even if there is different different rate per site, different sites and different rate. Yeah, in a very transparent way.
That's no, really. I mean, it's great. And what, I mean, what is there a particular project just to round off on that you're excited about, or what developments do you see in the next couple of years that will move us forward?
I am personally very excited to see once we have sorted the being able to charge in every place problem, how this is seamlessly integrated with local generation and with grid flexibility, because this is when it's all going to get properly optimized. This is what I'm thinking as energy optimization, not just seeing EV charging as a siloed need, but how it interacts and coexists also with all the other electric needs.
Yeah. No, I mean, it has got to be, that's, I can see that's a driving, that would keep me going. It's just because there is a vision of that sort of integration of your home, your workplace, your car, they should all be working together. That's really what we're sort of struggling to do.
I have seen videos of your home, how you have built it all together.
Yeah.
My home is very similar, but then again, you're the decision maker, I'm the decision maker. I can make it happen. Yeah. How do you make that happen in a building with so many stakeholders? In a community.
Yeah. Yes. Now, and because there's something mentioned in my notes about Solar Edge, which I think of as a company that makes inverters. But are you working with them? Is that part of the thing where if there's a big solar array somewhere near a car park, you can utilize that power? Is that what
absolutely?
That relationship?
Yeah.
Right.
Solar Edge is our strategic partner, and they have also invested in WeVo, and we're working together on an amazing solution that combines that does full building energy optimization.
Right.
Yeah, so there's some exciting things to come.
Yeah, because I mean I've only seen two examples of this, one in the Netherlands and one in France, of proper big car parks, like at a big shopping mall, with every single space covered in solar panels. I mean, it was just it was basically solar panels with cars underneath them. And you go, why can't we do that in every car park? Because it's so obvious. And then each of the poles that support the solar panels has a charger on it. And where's that electricity coming from? There. Yeah. That you couldn't have it more local. I mean, that's how it should be, isn't it? I mean, is that I don't know. Have you worked on any of those projects? Because I know they do exist.
Yeah, we're working on a few projects together with SolarEdge at the moment, and there's some big announcements that happened recently about this platform called SolarEdge One coming early next year, and WeVo is going to be the integrated as the EV part of this software system.
So I think what we've got to do then next year, when it's nice and sunny and warm, is go somewhere where you've done this, where this has happened.
Absolutely,
I really want to see it. Yeah, no, because that's when people who've never driven an electric car know nothing about it. They see that, they see a car park with solar panels on and cars charging, and they go, "Oh, I've definitely know that experience." That where it makes sense. There's a kind of connection there. Effie, it's been really good talking to you. Thank you for spending so much time with us. And I mean, it's really, I think we will definitely want to come and visit something that you've set up. I mean, we'll have to keep in touch. Yeah. It's really exciting what you're doing, and all power to you. I hope it goes really well. And
thank you for having me, Robert.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. We're definitely going to keep in touch with WeVo and with Effie. It's amazing what they're doing. The world is going to change in the next 10 years in ways we still can't really imagine. So I'm really excited about what they're doing. Hopefully we will catch up with them very soon. Please do tell your friends about the Fully Charged Show podcast. Please do have a look at the Fully Charged Show on the YouTubes, and also the Everything Electric show, which this podcast is hosted on the Everything Electric channel on YouTube. Obviously, people also download it as an audio doobry. So please do subscribe to us on whatever audio downloading doobry you use. And do, spread the word, because what we're doing, I think, is fascinating and possibly optimistic and helpful for the human race in the coming hundreds of years. That's it. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening/watching.